Hey guys, Hector here with another cosplay vlog. If you guys remember last week I talked about some of the things I learned about cosplay as like a newbie cosplayer. And I said I want to save the topic about cosplay is not consent until this week because it's a pretty big topic. So in case you don't know, cosplay is not consent is kind of an organization, and it's just an idea that just because we're wearing cosplay or any sort of costume doesn't mean we should be verbally or physically harassed. Now, I'm not sure if it was an idea first or an organization first, and if the organization is really still up and running, because I tried to look up information on the Cosplay is Not Consent organization, and I was just able to find a Facebook page with a little bit of information, and then it had a URL, cosplaysnotconsent.org, and it went to a Tumblr page which didn't have too much other information. And then through some searching, I found out that there was a Twitter page, which is Cosplay X Consent, and it has been running like 2 years. So they have pretty bad social marketing and everything. But the main point and the good thing is that the idea lives on with or without the organization. And when it comes to the message of Cosplay is Not Consent, I'm mostly on board. Yes, I 100% agree that nobody should be physically or verbally assaulted just because they're wearing a costume, but it's just, I'm worried about some of the wording in the messaging. Like, I keep hearing you feel uncomfortable or unwanted attention and you gotta run to a safe space. It's just, that kind of wording worries me, and I feel like people will take it and then just run with it, and then we'll have even more problems. Now, obviously, the entire convention should be a safe space, and we should all just have fun cosplaying. But of course, there are times where things would arise, and then I'm just worried about some people would say, "Oh, this awkward moment made me feel uncomfortable," and does that go against Cosplay is Not Consent? And I know some people would be like, "No, that's not what Cosplay is Not Consent is about." That's why I'm saying I'm just worried about the whole wording of the message. Let's go into a more specific example, because I've seen some Cosplay is Not Consent messages and pictures about staring. And when it comes to staring, I think it's just something we should be able to deal with at this time. Because I know everybody that cosplays would have people kind of look at them sort of weird because we're wearing costumes and it's not Halloween, and people automatically think that's weird. And they might say some small things that's not really a big deal. So just the fact that we cosplay, we should be able to deal with regular people kind of staring at us and saying minimal things. So once we get into a convention, I think we should be able to deal with people just sort of staring at us or saying small minor things. This is just my opinion, of course. And a little bit further on the whole staring thing. So I think some people do just stare because they see stuff that they like. And I know some people might feel a little weirded out, but it's just sometimes people want to stare because they see something that they like. And you shouldn't feel weirded out unless it gets to a long degree of staring, and like they follow you around and they're still staring at you. Something of that nature. Once it gets to that, then I think you should be worried about it, and then it should go into the whole Cosplay is Not Consent category. So that also worries me with the whole zero tolerance policies, because not everything is a whole zero tolerance thing. There's always ifs and buts and certain situations, and I think we should take our own thoughts into account. And another thing about staring real quick, this is just coming from the view of an otaku. Now, I've noticed a lot of otaku and people that go to conventions are pretty unsociable, and they're usually like introverts, and they don't really know how to talk with people. So sometimes they might just stare because they're like working up the courage to talk to a person. Sometimes I've done that. Like, I see someone and I just want to ask for a picture with them, and I like look at them and look back and look at them, and I'm just thinking, come on, just go and do it, And then so when I start seeing these things about the Cosplay is Not Consent, don't stare at people, then I start thinking, does that count as staring too much or staring too hard or something? And that's just another part of the whole wording, part of the message too, I know they can't put all this ifs, ands, or buts on a little message picture, picture graph or whatever, but it's just another thing that I'm saying I don't fully agree with the whole Cosplay is Not Consent thing, and definitely not zero tolerance policies. Now, of course, there are some times when you might get followed or you might get physically assaulted or harassed where you're like, know that this is the wrong type of harassment. It's not just a small thing, it's a big thing. And when that time comes, then you should go find a volunteer or security or speak out. And if you need help at that moment, then it's totally okay to like scream, hey, I need help or something, because there's people all around you and people aren't afraid to go and jump in and help you. And I'm not saying there's going to be an all-out brawl or something, but just to calm down the situation and so that everybody is fine and safe. And that was a big issue to the conventions that I went to. I didn't actually see any harassment or even hear any harassment when I was at the convention. But then when I went home and I went online to the convention's group on Facebook, people were saying, oh yeah, I was harassed about this situation and that situation. And a lot of people were like, why didn't you contact security or just say something? And sometimes they did try to find security. Like there are a few times when they couldn't find security or a volunteer, and then they did end up getting more security and more volunteers the next time around. So that was a good thing. But also, you can always just speak out to somebody around you if you need help right then and there. And of course, it's always a good idea to travel in groups if you feel like vulnerable or if you feel you might get harassed. And I know some people would say, well, I shouldn't have to travel in groups, but yeah, I shouldn't have to lock my doors, but there are burglars out there and there are just assholes out there, and you just have to be prepared. Now, also in those conversations online, some people were saying that they should bring like tasers or pepper spray, and that is just a horrible, horrible idea. Again, you should not be fighting, you should not be using any weapons of any kind like pepper spray or tasers, especially in conventions, because at least the conventions that I go to, there are just people all around and it gets packed. So if you just spray some pepper spray, you're probably going to get like 10 other innocent bystanders in the process. And so things can get bad really quickly if you do something like that. So the best thing to do is try and find a volunteer or security and get that dealt with in that way. Another important thing is how you convey the message. Like some people just don't understand some of these rules of cosplay is not consent. And like I said in my last video, there were some things that I learned during cosplaying and some things I learned late in life, like not even about cosplay. Like I didn't realize that some people didn't like to be touched at all. And I'm not talking about touching sensitive areas or even hugging. Some people don't even like being touched on the arm. And so if you explain this to them in like a regular way as equals, not talking down to them like they're a kid or like they're, the scum of the earth, then you can convey the message better instead of like just, railing on them, Just be like, hey, can you please not touch me? Or say something like, I don't really like to be touched, so please don't touch me. Or please don't do this because of this. If you just say, don't do this, or I'm feeling harassed, I'm feeling threatened, then people automatically get defensive, and then the whole message is kind of lost on them. Education is still important even later in life, but you have to do it in a way that people understand. And of course, there are some times when you will meet like complete assholes or just people who are like super drunk and you can't really bargain with them, you can't educate them. So when it comes to that situation, then again, the best thing to do is just find security or volunteer or some other staff to help with the situation. One more thing I want to remind people of. It's not just men harassing women. Sometimes women harass men. Sometimes men harass men. And sometimes women harass women. So you shouldn't automatically dismiss people just based on their gender and not even their size, because they can be big people and they can be assaulted or harassed and they'd rather just contact security or something like that and not cause a big fight, And I just think that the whole messaging or the whole conversation is important on everybody's side. Don't automatically dismiss anyone. Just have a little, back and forth. But that's all I got to say about this topic. So you can give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. And you can leave a comment telling me if you agree or if you disagree. We can have a totally fine civil conversation about it. And, I can hear your thoughts. You can hear my thoughts. And again, we can have a back and forth and a clear conversation. I think that's what's most important. And you can also subscribe to my channel for more otaku related stuff. Sometimes I do vlogs like this, and sometimes I do product reviews. And as always, Don't be afraid to be an otaku.